What does a pharmacist do? Well, most people might answer that a pharmacist dispenses the medications that my doctor prescribes. Now, I work with a ton of great pharmacists, and one thing that I don't generally see is excitement about pills in a vial. And this is probably because pharmacists have been trained to do so much more. So what can you get excited about in your community? To find out, let's go beyond the scripts. Everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Scripts. I'm your host, Will Tuft with PioneerRx, and today a special guest is joining us. Welcome, Bri Morris, a familiar face in the world of independent pharmacy.
Hey, thanks so much, Will. I'm so excited to be here.
So I was really looking forward to having you on because I think everybody knows Bri throughout the world of independent pharmacy because you've been a very vocal, very visible face within the NCPA organization for, 10 years?
It was about 10 and a half that I was with NCPA, so yeah.
Awesome. So, recently I saw that you've made some moves and wanted to check in with you, see how things are going and see what you're up to in Arkansas these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Will. So I'm originally from Arkansas. It's my home state, and I left NCPA in early January and started a new position with Arkansas CPESN as their executive director. And I'm also working as the Vice President of Innovation with the Arkansas Pharmacist Association. So in a split role within the state. It was a hard decision because I had such a great time at NCPA. I learned so much during my tenure there, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit during this. And I had a wonderful team. But I feel like it's a nice transition for me personally and professionally. I'm still supporting independent pharmacy, still very much in tune with that mission. And, I think that will probably be my career trajectory is supporting independent pharmacy.
Yeah, awesome. So where at in Arkansas are you?
So I'm living in Little Rock. I actually moved here about a year ago, and I was working remotely for NCPA for about 9 months before I took this position.
Excellent. So were you in another? I thought you were in a much smaller part somewhere in Arkansas. I was curious about where you were.
So I'm originally from a little teeny town called DeWitt, which is in the southeast Arkansas area. Dean's Pharmacy, Karen and Dean Watts, I believe, are Pioneer customers as well, but I worked for them. They're old family friends. I've known them my entire life. But yeah, I'm from the Arkansas Delta. For those of you who are not super familiar with Arkansas, Stuttgart is the duck hunting capital of the world, which we're about 30 minutes from Stuttgart there. So I used to joke that when I was growing up, I would drive 90 miles to go to the movie theater because
Yep.
We had one. There was a movie theater in Stuttgart, which would have been half an hour away, but it only had 2 screens. And when they renovated it, they didn't renovate it on a significant slope. So, you drove the 90 miles to go to Little Rock to see a movie on the big screen.
Nice. Yeah. So for anyone kind of outside of this region, so I'm also in the same region that would be considered what we call the Arklatex. So like our TV and our news channels will refer to that kind of corner of Arkansas, Texas, and Louisiana, where we're not New Orleans, we're not the southern Louisiana you picture. It's not Dallas cowboy hats. It's not the mountains of Arkansas. It's kind of this weird little piney wood area of the country that kind of merges all 3 of those states into one. And so I've lived up here and definitely made a 20-minute drive to a movie theater in high school. So very similar.
And you're in Dallas now, though, right?
So now I'm in Shreveport today. So we have the Dallas office, and we also have the Shreveport office where Many of the PioneerRx support team that have been with us since the beginning are still here. So interesting note too. When I was an installer, I would travel the country and go to independent pharmacies all over the country, and sometimes we have customers in every different kind of city situation you can imagine, from really, really rural to, right in the middle of the biggest cities. And I always enjoyed going to the small towns like that. It's just a unique slice of Americana that, I think really is a great place for independent pharmacies to really serve their communities too.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely. It's a vast difference of kind of where pharmacies are and their customer base, the demographics that are there. When I think about my hometown, in a lot of ways, the pharmacy is the healthcare hub. There's a critical access hospital there, a couple nursing homes. I think this has changed from the way it was, 10 or so years ago, but the community pharmacist would go into the critical access hospital and was the pharmacist on duty for, an hour of the day to provide them what they needed, serving the nursing homes, and then as well as kind of that healthcare point in the store. And, Arkansas is a pretty rural state overall. And we've gotten some really good scope of practice laws and statewide protocols that are in place to for pharmacists to be able to fill in those healthcare gaps and provide that access in some of these, really rural areas.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that has been a driving force for a lot of pharmacy change. If you think during COVID, obviously, I mean, what a great example. But, even looking at states like Montana who have had to find creative solutions because you just don't have a pharmacy or, a pharmacist within, 10 square miles sometimes. So definitely necessity brings some interesting innovation.
Absolutely. I think so as well. We've, with Arkansas CPESN, have been fortunate enough to have some opportunities to train up pharmacy teams to be community health workers within the state. So I think we have about 20 community health workers in the state that are connecting the pharmacies, the patients in their communities to resources that are outside of the pharmacy, a lot of which the pharmacy team does anyway, or they have been doing anyway, but being able to train that individual as a community health worker, and that is a recognizable term outside of kind of our little neck of the woods. So to the rest of healthcare, community health worker means something. So I just bring that up to say, so we have about 20 that are currently trained in that, and then we're training about 40 more over the next year or so within the state.
Wow.
And whenever you go to a payer or a grant funder, we have a great relationship with both colleges of pharmacy here. UAMS has been a great supporter of Arkansas CPESN, and Megan Smith, who I know you've talked with before, is just phenomenal and is a huge asset to the team here. But training those community health workers and having those extra access points within the community really means something whenever we go talk to payers and to grant funders to be able to say, well, we've got a network of, what will be 60 community health workers in some of the most hard to reach areas of the state.
Yeah. So for anybody that's listening who's not really familiar with that, but is definitely performing, more than dropping off their prescriptions. I'm thinking about a conversation with Joe Williams where, there's a limb blocking the driveway and, so he's out there with the chainsaw cutting down a limb. How do you bill for that? But some of the things that, your team is just doing for free every day, and not because it's a formal process, but because they care and they're so well suited to perform that extra care just to check in with that patient. How can somebody kind of start that process to explore, and then how is that reimbursed?
Great questions. So it's state specific, as a lot of other things are in pharmacy, right? So that's something to consider. If you're a CPESN pharmacy, there's a CPESN special purpose group called CPESN Health Equity that Jake Galdo and Trip Logan are kind of the leaders in that's really focused around community health workers and defining that role, helping you kind of put that into workflow. What does that look like for you in your store? And then helping kind of sell defining what that ROI is and being able to articulate that to provider. It's very local. So, my example with Arkansas is to be able to have that to go out to payers and to the universities in your local area. It might be that discharge workers in the hospital, discharge planners, are community health workers or social workers in your area. And so if your pharmacy has a community health worker that's employed within your store and able to connect patients with different access points for care, like exactly what you're talking about cutting down limbs, or, maybe they don't have access to good quality food. So getting them connected to Meals on Wheels, or they don't have reliable transportation. So obviously your delivery service is critical to their medication care. But then even is there a step further where, there's some sort of service in the community to be able to get them to doctor's appointments. It doesn't mean that your pharmacy has to provide all of those things. It's more about connecting them to the existing resources. So one way that we are exploring it, we have a grant for CPESN pharmacies to set up sustainable diabetes education programs within their pharmacies. So we're in the process of, I think we've trained about, Eric's going to keep me honest over here, who's running kind of the back end. We've trained about 9 or 10 pharmacies through the program. And we're looking to train about 50 over the next 5 years to have sites across the state. But community health workers can provide a lot of the services within a diabetes education, diabetes self-management education program. Well, that very quickly becomes a better revenue model for you in your pharmacy versus having the pharmacist do all components of that service. So local, looking into diabetes self-management education. Another way might be if you're exploring the long-term care at home side of things, you need a patient attestation form that kind of says this patient meets the qualifications to be an LTC at home patient. A community health worker might be a great individual to kind of do that intake form and to work with, if you're getting referrals for LTC at home from, say, rehab facilities or discharge planners in the hospital, that would be a great place for a community health worker.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the opportunities there seem to kind of snowball because, like you said, if you have somebody in that situation where you're already engaging at that level and they need that level of care, that definitely kind of opens the door for that next step into the LTC at home. And even if you're not taking that step, it's really kind of the ultimate appointment-based model where you're able to, really say, okay, what else can we offer this patient, which is such a win-win opportunity, for the pharmacy to increase, their offerings, their sales, and their interaction with that patient. But, that patient obviously is looking for that assistance too.
Absolutely. I really think it's about, I had a conversation with Tripp about this a few months ago. I was like, can you tell me about community health workers again? Because we've talked about it before. A lot of, and I'm sure you've dealt with this in your role too. A lot of what I had to do at NCPA is, in my role as leading the education team and putting on the programming is how do we introduce this idea in a different light? How do we talk about it and make it relevant and timely to what people want to know? And after Tripp got done talking, I said, that sounds like what pharmacies do. It's just the inherent nature of independent pharmacy that you take care of your patients and you go out of your way to do it. So it's really about putting a title on it to express the value that you're already providing. And maybe you pick up some pearls along the way to even increase that value that you're providing. But, it's a way to kind of quantify it to the rest of healthcare.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's definitely one of the challenges for independent pharmacy with so many of the services that they've offered. Is that if you can't quantify it, if you can't standardize it, you certainly can't get paid for it because, how do you bill that? So it's for so many services, that's kind of been, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? So, this definitely seems to kind of package that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, my early days at NCPA, I started as their executive resident and then did that for about 4 or 5 months and then stayed on for a staff position. But my early 4-ish years at NCPA, I was leading PAMA, which was Pharmacist Advancing Medication Adherence. And we were talking about MedSync before MedSync was cool,
Yeah.
I think when I started, we had about 500 patients in Simplify My Meds, which was kind of like this. Many of your listeners may have used it, may still use it and use that terminology. But before the pharmacy management systems, and Pioneer definitely led the way with MedSync, but before that functionality was built into the system, kind of put together what is MedSync, what's needed, what does it look like operationally, how do we support pharmacies in that process. Anyway, we had about 500 patients when I started in that role, and I think we got up to 3,000 or 4,000 and then just stopped counting because, it was getting so much of the industry was taking on. But, here we are over a decade later. And I think we're finally getting to the point where we're talking about MedSync and the appointment-based model as is kind of a basis for your business. And, I know there are a lot of pharmacy owners who have maximized that program. There's probably still some work for some others to maximize that program. But I just bring that up to say practice transformation takes time. New ideas take time, and you get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in the time that I guess, so I started at PioneerRx right at like 13 years ago, and it's been interesting to see that shift where when I started, one of the key metrics on a pharmacy's success was script count. And, so it doesn't matter how efficiently those prescriptions were done because there was, it was still profitable, even if it wasn't done efficiently. And just my time at Pioneer, I've seen so much change, but from star ratings to, a real focus on adherence to, really slim reimbursements where the pharmacy had to find a way to do things more efficiently to remain profitable, to really needing to branch out to other services because the prescriptions were kind of just your foot in the door. So it's been interesting to see things evolve.
It is. It's been really interesting to see how it's evolved. And script count, that's an interesting one. I mean, that's how you assess even in your day-to-day talking. I would talk to friends. Oh, it was a busy day. How busy was it? Oh, and we did 450 today. We did 670. That's how you talked about things. And margins are really tight right now, and I'm really empathetic towards our pharmacy owners out there who are having to really sharpen the pencil on everything right now and look at their own budgets, and are looking for new opportunities to bring dollars in the door, and also how to tighten up expenses.
Yeah. So, working efficiently obviously has been more important as of late. I feel like those pharmacies that have been able to thrive in the difficult climate, when the seasons do change, as they will, I really believe that. I think a lot of states have made some great strides to help change those seasons again. And, it's going to be interesting to see those pharmacies that have thrived through the hard times, to really flourish when the season's more favorable. Now, I also feel like you're in a state that has been able to kind of lead the way. So where a lot of states are still, working through legislation, Arkansas has had a couple big wins that were really kind of pace setters in the past couple of years. So there's Senate Bill 520 a couple years ago, which really kind of increased transparency with PBMs. And then more recently, Senate Bill 9. And there's actually a quote that I was like, wow, that's amazing. The commissioner may examine or audit books and records for PBM providing claims processing services. Like, just very transparent. This is what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It, to be honest, the move to this position within the state, a lot of it had to do with how well the state is running and all the entities in the state working together. We have a phenomenal state association that's led by John Benson, who I know many of your listeners may have met, and he gets things done when it comes to what's going on the Hill, the practice issues that are being seen by our members, with a really nice independent pharmacy base that's supportive of the state association, the State Board of Pharmacy, the schools of pharmacy, Arkansas CPESN. Everyone is a lot, even a major payer in the state is paying pharmacists as providers. So that's been beautiful as well, because since we have statewide protocols that allow us to do test and treat and prescribe based on that to for COVID, strep, flu. We just got our HIV PEP and PrEP protocol that was approved by the Pharmacy and Medical Board, I believe, just last week. I think we're ready to go with education on that. Naloxone office visit and prescription if that patient needs that encounter. There's tons of opportunity within the state for pharmacies pharmacists that are looking to kind of expand into the medical billing arena or into additional services. So, the excitement for me in this position and the new challenge that I saw was coming into a place where everyone is working so well together. And NCPA is an amazing organization. All the national associations work very well together. It's just as you can see, it's harder when you've got 50 states that we're trying to move the ball down the field on some of this legislation to be able to change practice. And that's still very important. But I was excited to kind of be down in the trenches, working firsthand with all of these different entities and, as the executive director of Arkansas CPESN to see how we can really push the needle forward.
Yeah, that's exciting. I mean, so how long has Arkansas had Test to Treat?
Ooh, don't quote. I mean, you are quoting me because this is definitely a podcast.
It's a couple years, anyways.
Yeah, I think it's been a couple of years that we've had Test and Treat, and so a lot of pharmacies have been doing that, even cash during COVID. And now we've got a payer that's supporting pharmacists to continue that effort as well.
Yeah, I mean, some of those, I know, Washington State has been doing that for a long time. Some of those practices just make so much sense where you're not competing with any local healthcare providers. You're removing a bottleneck. You're offering a service that's either, non-existent, hard to find, or congested, depending on the market. But, no prescriber wants their practice full of flu tests. It doesn't work for anybody's schedule or anybody's business model. So, I mean, what do you think the hold up for these proven successful programs that are kind of no-brainers? What do you think it takes for these states that haven't looked at that? Is it that they haven't looked at the data? Is that there's pushback or it's just not priority?
I don't know because I haven't talked to the states. I could see it being both of those. Both of those could be potential barriers. One thing you have to toe the line on with any of this is your relationship with the medical providers and the community, and how is this seen as a way to increase access points and to help patient care overall versus a turf war between the providers there. So one piece that I forgot to mention as we were kind of going through the opportunities that pharmacists in Arkansas have to be able to test and treat or to bill practice transformation type efforts is that we have the ability to prescribe oral contraceptives when the patient needs it. Arkansas is number one in the country for infant mortality, number one in the country for maternal mortality. It's nice to be at the top of some lists, but that's not the one that we'd like to be at the top of. And there's quite a bit of work that we can do there. A lot of it goes back to being such a rural state. We've been talking with some experts in the state. Sometimes there's not an access point in that county. Well, that's really challenging. So, we're looking at while prescribing oral contraceptives may not be top of mind for pharmacy owners as far as the business opportunity, if we're able to demonstrate the impact that community pharmacies can provide by getting these patients on, in the post-pregnancy phase, getting them back on oral contraceptives, being able to do some interventions early on in a pregnancy to get them on folic acid, to check blood pressure, and hopefully we can make an impact on some of those mortality rates and really save our state some money. So that's kind of an opportunity that I see coming up, and would like to explore some more for Arkansas CPESN and pharmacy within the state. How do we help our state in this area?
Yeah, and it's such an opportunity to engage the community and have a healthcare touch point where there wouldn't be one otherwise, that's going to open up so many, again, other conversations with those patients that they just might not be having otherwise. So it's, again, just another great example of, in rural communities especially, how independent pharmacies can be that trusted point of contact that can really help connect so many different dots that so overlooked sometimes. But, it is really interesting to see when you are methodically looking at it as a healthcare worker, as, that destination in a community, and not just dispensing, which, again, is just a huge shift over the past few years. So let's play a game. If you're looking at every state, I think you have a unique perspective from your role at NCPA, where you've probably looked at a little higher level. So if you are just in a magic bubble and you're going to go open a pharmacy somewhere in the U.S., what states do you think have got some really pharmacy-friendly or progressive ideas? What do you think? What do you see out there that's really working that you've been excited about? I know Arkansas's led the way in a lot of ways. If you look at states like we mentioned Washington, North Carolina. Some states have just been more progressive in some ways. What have you seen that's really exciting and you would like to see other states look to?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I like that question. Honestly, I was thinking Washington because they have some very progressive laws in Washington, but Idaho would probably be pretty high on my list as well. Idaho also, from my knowledge, is a pretty rural state, so that's something to think about there. They have a very progressive Pharmacy Practice Act that gives a lot of leadway to the practitioners within the state. Have you ever talked to anyone on this podcast from Idaho, or are you familiar with kind of what they have going on in the state?
Yeah, so I've made my way up there a couple times. Yeah, I've done a couple installs up there. But I haven't really talked to anybody in the realm of, the state laws or anything.
So Alex Adams, who was at NACDS, and that's the National Association of Chain Drugstores for folks who may be less familiar with that. He was at NACDS a while ago, 6 or 7 years ago, and then he went on to be the Idaho State Board of Pharmacy Executive Director. He's since moved on to that and works for the state of Idaho, I believe, in their the state of Idaho in a different position. But one of the things that he did when he was board exec at Idaho was to take the Pharmacy Practice Act and condense it down. I believe, I don't want to quote, but at least he condensed it by 2/3 of laws within the state. So getting rid of what one might consider an unnecessary or outdated regulation, and really bringing it down to what's within the education and the training of the pharmacist. A lot of times there's a common phrase we say in pharmacy where we say practice at the top of your license, right? And Alex and Jen, his wife, Jen Adams, who is on faculty, she's an associate dean at Idaho State University in their College of Pharmacy. they really challenge that and say, practice at the top of your education, because we're trained on quite a bit in pharmacy school that may not, that your state may not allow you to do yet, but we have all this knowledge base that, may be far above where your state license allows you to practice based on where you are. So I really like the approach that Idaho has taken towards, their laws within the state that are governing the practice of pharmacy, and really giving the pharmacist in the state the authority to be able to care for their patients to the best of their ability. And, while still being concerned, and, number one role as a pharmacist is to protect the patient and to make decisions based on the patient's interest, and hopefully your education has prepared you to do that.
Yeah. It's kind of cool because, when you are dealing with an industry where there's so much passion and you have, for lack of a better term, I'm going to say the servant's heart, where you're just looking for ways to better serve your patients. It's you never go to a pharmacy convention and hear, oh, we have to do too much. You hear, oh, we want to do more. We want to be able to stay in business and do more. It needs to there needs to be a business aspect to it, but there's definitely this drive to do more. How can we better serve? And there's so many interesting opportunities in that as we identify some of those opportunities as science moves forward, and there's more understanding in pharmacogenomics and how, patients are affected differently, how the baby boomers are coming up to, some pretty significant demographic shifts in the next few years. There's so many ways that pharmacy can evolve. And if you are locked into the current license, that really limits what you can do with your education.
Absolutely. So I think there's opportunity, wherever you are, wherever your base is, it's probably worth a look at your Pharmacy Practice Act and make sure you're maximizing what you're allowed to do there and the opportunities that are within your state. Georgia is another great state. It's got great association, great independent pharmacy network as well. I think with any of this, I've learned your network is so important whenever you're in your career, and especially in pharmacy. That's one of the things I used to tell students at NCPA is that, now I've got a network of pharmacy owners throughout the country, and folks like you too, Will, that I've met that are in the independent pharmacy industry, and to be able to, still build on those relationships and have folks you can text and ask questions to and get feedback from is so important for the success of independent pharmacy.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point too. As a vendor, it is funny. I'm surprised how often I'm, in contact, and on social media, I'm always just interacting with my pharmacy friends. And, if I see something interesting in the news, or, just keeping up with what's going on in pharmacy, hey, Ben Jolly, are you seeing this field pop up anywhere? It's really neat to have that support, that professional support, but also, it's just really fulfilling as well.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of a tangent to this, but coming from NCPA and now at APA at the state association level, one thing that I would just encourage the listeners to think about. Number one, think about your own professional association ties, and how are you building that network? How are you connecting to peers in your area and, across the country if you're able to make it to another meeting, to the Pioneer meeting in May if you're, want to go and network with other users of the system and NCPA meeting and all those beautiful things. But also, as you're interacting with pharmacy students and those that are young in their career, really instilling in them that the importance of a pharmacy network and being involved in the different professional associations to do that. We're at a point, the students that are graduating from pharmacy school right now, most of them started their pharmacy school career in 2020, right? So, at our local schools, or at least at UAMS and at my alma mater, I'll speak for them. We do 3 years in person, and then you have your 1 year of APPE where you're on rotations. And that third year, actually, our P3 year, we split into 2 campuses. So half the students would go to Northwest and half would stay in Little Rock. I bring that up because we have students that are graduating that started in the middle of a pandemic and in a situation where they didn't, have those relationships even with their colleagues. So they didn't have that institutional knowledge from upperclassmen around the importance of getting involved, the importance of thinking about going to an APHA or an NCPA meeting or being involved in an association. So it's going to be interesting over the next 5 to 10 years as those students are coming through, and we're having to build up for students now the importance of that, but also these guys are about to graduate and they don't all have these networks because they haven't been building these relationships. And if you guys as preceptors and as bosses to interns, if you can try to instill the importance of that in them, I think it'll be better for all of us as a profession.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like, especially independent pharmacy owners that are pharmacists, you're pulled in so many directions. Again, the seasons for independent pharmacy have been a little tough as of late. And still there's, the passion to do more, but also the push to do more internally and, from all directions, it seems like. So, if you're an independent pharmacy owner, you have to be thinking, where can I put that energy? Or maybe like politics does not sound fun to me. Maybe, but precepting does. There's so many different ways to, engage in that community and find ways that are beneficial. It's been interesting with this podcast to talk to owners who, sometimes their best way to serve is to be behind the counter and be the face in their community, where there's some owners who, have to make themselves go make sure they're getting bench time because they're so drawn to other aspects such as advocacy or really enjoy teaching or, speaking at conferences. So, there's definitely room to get in where you fit in. But I think getting into some kind of organization, I think, is key because, it's really hard to go at it alone. And sometimes, I think back over the past year, some of the pharmacists that I know that have just been drawn to share their story on a big stage, Brent Dunlap and Kevin Duane, some of these guys have all of a sudden found themselves speaking, to senators and House of Representatives and different committees. It's been amazing.
It absolutely has. And it is a critical time in pharmacy right now. I know you guys know this. You're living and breathing it every day, or the listeners are, we were really close to a really big win earlier this year around PBMs. I know that there's a huge push. I'm not sure, Will, when you're planning on airing this. Probably not before the fly-in that happens next week. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So if you did go to the fly-in, whenever it happens, great for you. And if not, I'd encourage you, just getting a senator or representative into your store to see the BS that you're dealing with on a daily basis and look at your workflow and show them those claims that are coming through that are, below your cost. That's going to have a real impact on that politician. So I hear you that energy is drawn, that you're pulled in a million different directions. And I would just say that your you've got partners in that. Your associations are there to partner with you. Folks like you guys, your pharmacy management systems, your workflow solutions. Our goal is your success, and frankly, our business depends on your success. So, it's we're all here for you.
Yeah. So, what are you excited about in 2024, 2025? Where do you see some new opportunities or exciting changes, or just, incremental changes that are big wins for you personally in the next little bit in Arkansas?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I'm excited about in the short term is that we have started at APA, we're hosting meetings in 5 areas of the state for pharmacists and prescribers to get together and talk about issues with controlled substances in the state. So again, I go back to the list and the charts. So Arkansas has an opioid prescription rate of in the 70s. I believe it's like 78 prescriptions per 100 people, when the national average is a little less than 40. And then there are 5 areas of the state where that opioid prescribing rate is greater than 100 per 100 people in that area. So there's some work that could be done, most likely, between the pharmacists and prescribers to really look at, look at those rates and to see if there's anything that they could do to work together to lower them. There's quite a bit of pressures that pharmacies are under around opioid ordering and dispensing and what that might mean for your business. So the goal of these meetings is really to protect patient access to medications and to prevent drug shortages, because as we talked about earlier, it's a rural state. So if there's 2 pharmacies in the state and one of them is not able to order controlled substances anymore, that is a problem for all of the patients within the state. The funding for these meetings was provided. We were able to get opioid settlement dollars to be able to support these meetings. So I bring that up here because it might be something you look at within your own state to see if there's if that might be an opportunity to go and to be able to host this meeting. These meetings, it was based off, there was an area of the state that did this a couple of years ago organically. The pharmacists just came together, got the docs in the same room, and the doctors had no idea that what was being done was more than the national average. And they really were able to walk away with some next steps and how they might combat things. And, our goal is really to just facilitate the meeting and let the local providers, the local pharmacists, the local physicians and others, dentists, et cetera, that come to the meeting to work together, exchange cell phone numbers so that they are in touch and have, a relationship. So that's a short term something that we're working on. We've actually got one this evening, one of those groups.
How exciting. I mean, that's so great for one of the biggest kind of pharmacy issues and as of late. I mean, it's kind of a crazy social event, but also, what a nice landscape to create with that communication with those local prescribers and really just increasing that communication, letting them know that you're here and next time there is a question, next time there is a conversation that could be had, they've got your number.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, that's something we're really excited about. This will be our second. We've got 3 more over the next month or so. And, that's an example of something that I think is going to have a direct impact on our communities. And that's fulfilling to me, personally fulfilling to be able to be a part of that and see that. Other things I'm excited about over the next year or two. I'm, 3 months into this position at this point, so still kind of getting my feet underneath me with everything. I'm excited to see how we can move the needle on medical billing within the state. We've got, as I mentioned, one payer in the state who's paying pharmacists as providers. Love to see other payers do that and then, help support pharmacies and getting that built into workflow. Tackling the infant mortality and maternal mortality rates that I brought up. I'd love to see a project there to support Arkansans and help improve those rates. And then, the broken model for healthcare has got to change in the dispensing realm, and want to be able to continue to offer these services. We have to have the ability to continue to offer these services.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, there's some really great efforts. You mentioned the fly-in, and there's states that have really made some great steps at transparency. I think that most people in America now know what a PBM is, where very recently I think a lot of politicians didn't realize what a PBM was. So I feel like we're on the right track. I feel like the seasons will change sooner rather than later, and I'm excited about that. And it's exciting to see the pharmacies that have poised themselves to do well when it is more favorable.
Absolutely. I very much agree. And, even the roundtable that happened last month, I believe, and you had Chi and Darren that were representing independent pharmacy. And then, Mark Cuban on that. And I think he brought some light.
He came in hot.
He came in hot. And that was great. And then somebody sent me another clip that he did. I'm guessing after that. I actually don't know the timing of it, but another clip where he was talking about, PBMs, the big 3 PBMs and independent pharmacy and whether you love him or hate him, I'll take him talking about PBMs and bringing light to that all day, every day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been so exciting over the past year or two. I've pulled up YouTube and brought my kids in. Like, hey, look, these are friends of mine. I know these people. And look, they're talking in front of on the biggest stage in America. Look how neat this is. Like I'm, on the outskirts as a vendor, but very, very excited to be connected.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
All right, so we're coming up on an hour. I'm going to let you get back to it. I know you've still got plenty to do. You're probably still unpacking your office there. I'll let you get back to work. Thanks so much for joining us. And any time we can help here, definitely reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Will. It's great to talk to you, and I'll see you soon at a show, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I'll see you on the road. It's trade show season. I'm about to pack up and not permanently unpack for 6 months. So, thank you for listening to this episode of Beyond the Scripts, presented by the Catalyst Pharmacy Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please support our channel by liking, subscribing, and clicking the notification bell so that you'll be notified anytime we post new content. To stay up to date with all of the latest independent pharmacy news and content, follow PioneerRx on your preferred social media platform.